Hey there, you're looking kind of cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. The DNA ancestry test results arrived in Andy's email inbox with a soft ping. He had been eagerly anticipating this moment for weeks, curious about his family history and genetic makeup. As he clicked open the message and began scrolling through the information, his eyes widened in disbelief. There, in stark black and white, was an unexpected revelation. Andy had XX chromosomes. He blinked hard, rubbing his eyes to make sure he wasn't misreading, but the information remained unchanged. "This can't be right," he muttered, running a hand through his short brown hair. Andy had always identified as male, never questioning his gender. Yet here was scientific evidence suggesting something entirely different. He spent the next few hours poring over medical websites, trying to make sense of the results. Sleep eluded Andy that night as his mind raced with possibilities. What did this mean for his identity? Had he been living a lie his entire life? By morning, a sense of curiosity had begun to replace his initial shock. "Maybe I should explore this," he mused aloud to his empty apartment. The idea both thrilled and terrified him. Andy's fingers hesitated over his laptop keyboard before he steeled his nerves and typed crossdressing into the search bar. A flood of information and images filled the screen. His pulse quickened as he scrolled through photos of men in feminine attire. Before he could talk himself out of it, Andy grabbed his keys and headed for the mall. He wandered the women's clothing section, feeling out of place and self-conscious. Finally, he worked up the courage to select a simple black dress in what he guessed was his size. "It's for my girlfriend," he lied to the cashier, his face flushing. Back home, Andy held up the dress, its fabric soft against his fingertips. Taking a deep breath, he stripped off his t-shirt and jeans. The dress slipped over his head easily, the material cool against his skin. He turned towards the full-length mirror on his closet door and gasped. The dress hugged his body in ways he hadn't expected, accentuating curves he'd never noticed before. Andy ran his hands down his sides, marveling at how natural it felt. "Is this me?" he whispered, turning to examine his reflection from different angles. Something stirred inside him, a sense of rightness he couldn't explain. Over the next few weeks, Andy's experimentation continued in secret. He ordered makeup online and spent hours watching tutorial videos, learning to apply foundation, mascara, and lipstick. The transformation was subtle at first, but as his skills improved, he found himself staring at a stranger in the mirror, a beautiful woman with his eyes. One evening, Andy decided to take things further. He filled the bathtub with warm water and carefully shaved his legs, chest, and arms. The feeling of smooth skin was foreign but exhilarating. As days turned into weeks, Andy's private explorations became more frequent. He began wearing women's underwear beneath his work clothes, relishing the secret thrill. At home, he'd change into dresses or skirts, practicing walking in heels and perfecting his makeup technique. The more he embraced his feminine side, the more natural it began to feel. Andy found himself drawn to women's fashion magazines and beauty blogs. He started growing out his hair, telling coworkers he was trying a new style. One Saturday morning, Andy stood before his mirror in a floral sundress, hair styled into soft waves, makeup flawlessly applied. He twirled, watching the skirt billow around his legs. "Andrea," he said softly, testing out the name. It felt right on his tongue, like a missing puzzle piece clicking into place. That evening, Andy, now thinking of herself as Andrea, made a bold decision. She created a new email account and reached out to a local support group for transgender individuals. The response was immediate and welcoming. Andrea's first meeting with the group was nerve-wracking. She wore androgynous clothing, not yet ready to present fully as female in public. But as she listened to others share their stories, she felt a sense of belonging she'd never experienced before. "I always knew something was different about me," one woman said. "But it wasn't until I embraced my true self that I finally felt whole." Her words resonated deeply with Andrea. She left the meeting with a mix of emotions: fear, excitement, and above all, hope. In the weeks that followed, Andrea's confidence grew. She began experimenting with her appearance in public, starting small with clear nail polish and subtle makeup. Her coworkers noticed the changes but said little, perhaps unsure how to broach the subject. Andrea's wardrobe slowly transformed. Flowy blouses replaced button-downs, and tailored slacks gave way to wide-leg trousers. She invested in a quality wig, relishing the feeling of long hair framing her face. One crisp autumn day, Andrea made a life-changing decision. She scheduled an appointment with a gender therapist, taking the first step towards medical transition. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in her life, Andrea felt truly alive. As she walked to her car after the appointment, the breeze ruffled her skirt. Andrea paused, tilting her face towards the sun. A smile spread across her lips. No longer Andy's smile, but uniquely her own. The process of coming out to friends and family was daunting. Andrea started with her closest friend, inviting her over for coffee. When she opened the door in a simple black dress, the very first one she'd bought, her friend's eyes widened in surprise. "Andy?" she gasped. "It's Andrea now," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "I have something important to tell you." Over the next hour, Andrea poured out her story, the DNA test results, her journey of self-discovery, and her decision to transition. Her friend listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering support. "I always sensed there was something you were holding back," her friend said, squeezing Andrea's hand. "I'm so proud of you for embracing your true self." Buoyed by this positive response, Andrea gradually shared her truth with other friends and coworkers. While not everyone was immediately accepting, she was heartened by the overall support she received. Telling her family proved more challenging. Andrea's parents struggled to understand at first, clinging to memories of their son. But as they saw the joy and confidence that radiated from Andrea, they began to come around. "We may not fully understand," her mother said during a tearful conversation, "but we love you unconditionally. We just want you to be happy." As Andrea's external appearance aligned more closely with her inner self, she noticed a shift in how the world perceived her. Strangers began addressing her as ma'am or miss without hesitation. It was both thrilling and sometimes overwhelming. One day, while shopping for groceries, an elderly woman asked Andrea to reach an item on a high shelf. "Thank you, dear," the woman said warmly. "Us ladies have to stick together, don't we?" Andrea felt a rush of emotion at being so casually included in the sisterhood of women. It was a small moment, but it meant the world to her. As months passed, Andrea's confidence blossomed. She began hormone replacement therapy, watching with wonder as her body slowly changed. Soft curves appeared where there were once angles, and her skin became smoother. She immersed herself in learning about fashion and beauty, skills she'd never had the opportunity to develop before. Hours were spent experimenting with different styles, finding what made her feel most authentically herself. Andrea's evolving style reflected her growing comfort with her identity. She gravitated towards elegant, feminine clothing, flowing dresses, delicate jewelry, and classic pumps. Each carefully chosen outfit felt like an expression of her true self. At work, Andrea's transition was met with a mix of reactions. Some colleagues were immediately supportive, while others needed time to adjust. The Human Resources Department worked with her to ensure a smooth transition, including updating her name and pronouns in company records. One particularly meaningful moment came during a team meeting. As Andrea presented her project, she noticed her manager nodding along, fully engaged in her ideas rather than distracted by her appearance. It was a small but significant affirmation that she was valued for her skills and intellect, regardless of her gender identity. Outside of work, Andrea began to build a new social circle. She joined a women's book club, nervously attending her first meeting in a floral wrap dress and nude heels. To her relief, she was welcomed warmly. Her insights into the novel met with enthusiasm. "I love how you interpret the protagonist's journey," one woman commented. "It's so insightful." Andrea beamed, realizing that she was being seen and appreciated for her mind, not just her appearance. As her confidence grew, Andrea decided to try dating. She created profiles on several apps, being upfront about her transgender identity. While there were some disappointing interactions, she was pleasantly surprised by the number of genuine, respectful responses she received. Her first date as Andrea was with a kind-hearted man named Michael. They met for coffee, and Andrea found herself relaxing as they fell into easy conversation about their shared love of classic films. "You have the most beautiful smile," Michael said at one point, causing Andrea to blush. As they parted ways, Michael asked if he could see her again. Andrea's heart soared, not just at the prospect of a second date, but at the realization that she was worthy of love and attraction as her authentic self. With each passing day, Andrea felt more comfortable in her skin. The person she saw in the mirror now matched the woman she'd always been inside. Yet there were still moments of doubt and dysphoria, reminders that her journey was ongoing. One such moment came when Andrea was invited to a beach day with friends. The thought of wearing a swimsuit filled her with anxiety. She spent hours trying on different styles, fighting back tears as she confronted parts of her body that still felt incongruent with her identity. Finally, she found a vintage-inspired one piece that made her feel both beautiful and comfortable. As she stepped onto the sand, she braced herself for stares or comments. Instead, her friends greeted her with smiles and compliments. "That swimsuit is gorgeous," her friend Emily exclaimed. "You look amazing, Andrea." As the day wore on, Andrea's anxiety melted away. She found herself laughing and playing in the waves, feeling truly carefree for the first time in years. Andrea's journey of self-discovery extended beyond her gender identity. As she embraced her true self, she found the courage to pursue long-held dreams and passions. She signed up for a creative writing class, something she'd always wanted to try but had been too self-conscious to attempt before. In class, Andrea found her voice as a writer. She poured her experiences into stories and poems, sharing them with trembling hands but receiving enthusiastic feedback from her instructor and classmates. "Your writing has such raw honesty," her instructor praised. "You have a unique perspective that needs to be heard." Encouraged by this response, Andrea began submitting her work to literary magazines. The day her first poem was accepted for publication, she danced around her apartment in joy, feeling a sense of validation that went beyond her gender identity. As Andrea approached the one-year anniversary of beginning her transition, she decided to organize a celebration with her closest friends and family. It was a chance to reflect on how far she'd come and to express gratitude to those who had supported her along the way. The evening of the party arrived, and Andrea stood before her mirror, putting the finishing touches on her makeup. She wore a stunning emerald green dress that hugged her curves, her long hair styled in elegant waves. The woman who gazed back at her was confident, radiant, and unequivocally herself. As guests arrived, Andrea was enveloped in hugs and words of love and admiration. Her parents, who had come so far in their journey of acceptance, beamed with pride as they watched their daughter mingle with friends. "You look so happy, sweetheart," her mother said, squeezing her hand. "That's all we ever wanted for you." Andrea's friend Emily clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," she announced, to Andrea, for having the courage to be true to herself and inspiring all of us to live more authentically. As glasses were raised and cheers erupted, Andrea felt overwhelmed with emotion. She looked around at the smiling faces of her loved ones, marveling at the journey that had brought her to this moment. Later that night, after the last guest had left, Andrea sat on her balcony, gazing up at the stars. She thought back to that day when she'd first seen the results of her DNA test, how confused and frightened she'd been. Now she felt only gratitude for the path it had set her on. Andrea realized that while her transition had been about aligning her outer appearance with her inner truth, it had given her so much more. It had taught her resilience, self-love, and the power of living authentically. She had discovered strengths she never knew she possessed and forged deeper, more genuine connections with those around her. As she closed her eyes and breathed in the cool night air, Andrea felt a profound sense of peace. The journey ahead would undoubtedly hold more challenges, but she faced them now with confidence and hope. She was Andrea, daughter, friend, writer, woman, and she was finally, truly home in herself. The next morning, Andrea woke with a renewed sense of purpose. Her celebration had been more than just a party. It was a launching point for the next chapter of her life. She felt ready to push herself further, to continue growing and evolving. Over breakfast, she made a list of goals for the coming year. Some were practical, saving for gender confirmation surgery, advancing in her career. Others were more personal, traveling solo, learning to speak French, running a half marathon. As she wrote, Andrea realized how much her aspirations had expanded since embracing her true identity. It was as if shedding the weight of her secret had freed up energy and imagination she never knew she had. With a surge of motivation, Andrea decided to start on one of her goals immediately. She laced up a pair of running shoes and headed to a nearby park. As she jogged along the tree-lined path, she marveled at how different her body felt now. Softer in some places, stronger in others. A light rain began to fall, but Andrea didn't mind. She tilted her face up, letting the cool droplets mingle with the sweat on her skin. Each step felt like an affirmation of her strength and resilience. As she rounded a bend in the path, Andrea nearly collided with another runner, a woman about her age with vibrant red hair. "Oh, I'm so sorry," Andrea apologized, catching her breath. The woman waved off the apology with a smile. "No worries, I wasn't paying attention either. I'm Megan, by the way." "Andrea," she replied, returning the smile. They fell into step together, chatting easily as they ran. Andrea learned that Megan was training for a marathon and had a wealth of tips to share. "You should join our running group," Megan suggested as they cooled down. "We meet every Saturday morning. All levels are welcome." Andrea hesitated only briefly before agreeing. The old Andy might have shied away from such an invitation, but Andrea was determined to embrace new experiences. The following Saturday, Andrea arrived at the park feeling a mix of excitement and nerves. She wore cropped leggings and a moisture-wicking top, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. As she approached the group, Megan waved her over enthusiastically. "Everyone, this is Andrea," Megan announced. "She's joining us today." Andrea was met with a chorus of warm greetings. As they set off on their run, she found herself chatting easily with the other women, discussing everything from favorite running routes to book recommendations. By the end of the session, Andrea's legs were sore, but her spirit was soaring. She had pushed herself physically and stepped out of her comfort zone socially. As the group dispersed, several women invited her to join them for post-run coffee. Sitting in the cozy cafe, sipping a latte and laughing at a funny story one of her new friends was telling, Andrea felt a profound sense of belonging. These women had accepted her without question, seeing her simply as another runner, another friend. Over the next few months, Saturday morning runs became a highlight of Andrea's week. She found herself growing stronger and faster, but more importantly, she was building genuine friendships. The women in the group became a support system, cheering each other on through personal and professional challenges. As spring turned to summer, Andrea's confidence continued to grow in all areas of her life. At work, she took on more responsibilities and even gave a presentation at a major industry conference. Standing at the podium in a tailored blazer and pencil skirt, she felt powerful and self-assured. Her personal life was flourishing as well. Andrea had been seeing Michael, the man she'd met on her first date as herself, for several months now. Their relationship deepened as they shared hopes, fears, and dreams. Michael's unwavering support and acceptance helped Andrea fully embrace every aspect of herself. One warm evening, as they strolled hand in hand through a local art festival, Michael turned to Andrea with a serious expression. "You know, I've been thinking," he began, his voice slightly nervous. "My lease is up next month, and I was wondering if you might want to consider moving in together?" Andrea's heart leapt. She had been pondering the same idea, but hadn't known how to bring it up. "Yes," she said without hesitation, pulling Michael into a joyful embrace. As they began the process of combining their lives and households, Andrea reflected on how far she had come. 2 years ago, she had been living as Andy, confused and disconnected from her true self. Now she was building a life filled with love, purpose, and authenticity. The day Andrea and Michael moved into their new apartment together was a celebration of new beginnings. Friends and family pitched in to help, filling the space with laughter and positive energy. As the last box was unpacked and the helpers had gone home, Andrea and Michael stood in their living room, taking in the sight of their combined possessions. Photos of Andrea throughout her transition were displayed proudly alongside Michael's family pictures and mementos from their relationship. "Welcome home," Michael said softly, wrapping his arms around Andrea from behind. She leaned into his embrace, overcome with emotion. "Home," she repeated, the word filled with new meaning. Andrea turned in Michael's arms, her eyes meeting his. The room was filled with a charged silence, the air thick with anticipation. Thanks for watching. The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more. I hope you have a wonderful day, my cutie.